Assalamualaikum. Today my group will present about supply. So what is definition of supply? Supply is defined as the ability and willingness to sell or produce a particular product or service in a given period time at a particular price, ceteris variables. Okay, so ceteris paribus means holding other factors constant while some other factors change. So when the in the previous topic of demand kan, so kalau demand it's from buyer, right? So in the supply it's from supplier. Okay, so the supplier must have ability and willingness to sell or produce a product or service. If there are only have one, it can happens in the supply. So they must have ability and willingness to sell or produce a particular product. Okay, so that's mean the definition of supply.
Hi, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Next, I will talk about law of supply. So, what is law of supply? Law of supply is talking about if the price is increases, then the quantity will increases too. Besides, if the price is decreases, then the quantity will decreases too. It shows that the relationship between the price and the quantity in supply is positive. Why is that happen? Because as a seller or as a firm, we want to get more profit. The higher the price, the more profit that we get. There are two types of supply curve. First is individual and second is market. For individual supply curve, it is upward sloping from left to right, and the market supply curve is flatter and wider than the individual supply curve. And that's all about law of supply.
Hi, my name is IRHAM SHAFIQAL binti FAUZI. My matric number is 2020833354, and I will present changes in quantity supplied versus change in supply under the topic supply. So, the changes in quantity supplied occurs when the price are changed and there is a movement along the supply curve, or we call it as ceteris paribus. There is two movement that exist in changes in quantity supplied, which is an upward movement and a downward movement. And an upward movement occurs when there is increase in quantity supplied, and downward movement occurs when there is decrease in quantity supplied. While changes in supply also divided by two when there is increase in supply and also a decrease in supply. When there is an increase in supply, the curve will shift to the right, and when there is decrease in supply, the curve will shift to the left. So now I will explain to you the difference between changes in quantity supply and changes in supply. The movement of the changes in quantity supply are along the supply curve. It occurs when the price of the product changes while the other factors remain constant. There is two movement in changes in quantity supply. Firstly, when the price of the product rises, the quantity supply of the product also increase. So that will be an upward movement. While when the price falls, the quantity supply of the product will decrease. So that will make the movement downward. Movement in changes in supply are shift in the supply curve. It occurs when the other factors are changes while the prices are constant. It increase in supply such as S1 to S2. When the supply curve are shifted to the right, the price of the substitute is decreased. Price of input also decrease. The expected future price also decrease. There is an increase in price of complementary goods, and it will also increase in numbers of sellers. The government will provide subsidy to sellers, and it will make the supply decrease. And lastly, when there is a supply curve shifted to the left, the price of the substitute goods are increased, as well as price of the inputs and also expected future price. The price of the complementary goods and numbers of sellers will decrease, and it will make the government impose tax on sellers. And that is all from me. Thank you.
Factors affecting supply. Number 1. Price of related goods. When the price of good A increase, the quantity supply of good A also increase, and supply of good B increase, as they are complementary goods. As an example, when price of car increase, quantity supply of petrol also increase. If they are substitute goods, when the price of good A increase, the quantity supply also increase, but the quantity supply of good B decrease. For example, when the price of chicken increase, quantity supply for chicken also increase, and the quantity supply for beef decrease. Number 2. Cost of production. When the cost of production increase, the quantity supply for the product will decrease. For example, when cost on baking cakes increase, the quantity supply for cake will decrease. Factors number 3. Technological development. When the level of technology increase, the supply will increase. Higher technology levels allow a smaller quantity resource to be used for production, which will reduce the cost of production. Number 4. Government policies. The first one is tax. When there is tax, the supply of goods and services decrease because it discourages producer from producing extra goods, which increase the cost of production. Now, the second one is subsidies. When there is subsidies, the supply of goods will increase because subsidy encourage producer to produce more. Factors number 5. Number of sellers in the market. Number of sellers influence the supply because when suppliers increase, more output can be produced and the quantity supply will increase. And the last one, future expectation. When the producer expects that the price of goods will increase, the producer will supply less goods at the present time. They will supply goods more at future to gain more profit.